What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you part 3 of what will ultimately be 4 or 5 parts in my Ultimate Challenge walkthrough, in which I go through my own playthrough of the Ultimate for Pillars of Eternity 2, so I can show people exactly how to tackle that challenge in a pretty effective way. So obviously we're on part 3 here, there are some previous stuff you'll have missed, but still there will be some relevant links down in the description below, but otherwise we're going to go ahead and jump fully into this, as we are pretty much well on our way at this point. Now last we left off, we found ourselves finishing up everything we needed to do on our first visit to Nekataka, and we were leaving that area to first go to Hasongo to handle some main story stuff, before continuing on our way in terms of prepping our character for the inevitable boss fights we're about to have. And we have just a little bit more prep work before we can start that in full. So as we leave Nekataka, obviously we're going to get our ship in order, make sure our food and supplies are ready to go, but otherwise we are going to be sailing up and around the corner of the island we're on currently, while basically just following the shoreline all the way over to Hasongo. Now you do want to watch out for some major storms on your way, as this is where we're going to get into the part of the sea that we're going to have to deal with a lot of Andra's God challenge, which is the massively increased storm sizes. But Hasongo is basically a straight shot away from the top of the island that Nekataka is on. Now when we arrive at Hasongo, we're basically going to take the pacifist route through this area as well, so we can handle the main story stuff, giving us more time to complete what we're focused on, while simultaneously avoiding the most dangerous stuff. So as soon as you land, go ahead and stealth and make your way into the room just above you. This room is full of people who can explain the situation. Hasongo, after Aethys showed up, was attacked by the Naga, and we're going to steal everything in this room and then potentially try to pickpocket a few people, but otherwise we're going to be on our way. We're going to head north up the sort of passageway past all the Naga above us, and as long as your stealth is good, you'll be able to move right through here. Once we get down past the stairs, we're going to see a small shallow water area with a bunch more Naga, but we're going to go into the door just to the right of that. From there we can descend into a flooded passage where we can decide where to swim. As long as you've got a pry bar with you, you can first go to the leftmost area where we can talk with the spirit of a fallen Naga. This is also the time at which we may want to go ahead and craft some luminous Adra potions, because we're likely to start taking some wounds in our various endeavors. If you get 3 wounds, you die, which is obviously game over for us, but we will have stolen or at least found all of the reagents needed to make the luminous Adra potions now when we were in Nekataka. So, luminous Adra potions notably give you plus to all skills until rest, which is nice, but more importantly, they also remove all of your current injuries, which means we can maintain our buffs by not resting, and using these potions to instead cure our wounds if we get any, which will come up in just a short moment. Otherwise, we talk to this Naga here, where we can ask it some questions about what it was searching for and everything, and we're basically going to take its soul along with us, so it can help us restore the Adra Pillar in just a moment. Now, we're going to go back to where we were, and then take the right passage in the underground water area, and you're likely going to take an injury there because you're almost certainly not going to have the athletics to not do that, which is one of the reasons we picked up the luminous Adra potions. But when we step out the door from this area after we loot everything, we're going to find ourselves on the other side of those shallows with all the Naga in them. So when you step outside that door, make sure you're in stealth before you click on it. Then we're going to make our way over to the stairs over here, and we're going to just nice and easy make our way around the sort of grassy path. There is a single Naga that will patrol this area, but you can sort of just move quickly enough to avoid the guy. And then we're going to go through the top of the ruined house, looting what we can, of course, before making our way outside and around the corner where we can see one of Aethys' giant footprints as we head up the stairs to the actual lighthouse. We're going to step inside the lighthouse and be met with the leader of the Naga, but we're of course going to use all our diplomacy to take the peaceful option here. Now we're going to do that by basically presenting the spirit of the Naga that we just sort of rescued from that watery area. Explain that you're here to do the will of the gods, then present the soul of that Naga, and you'll have free permission to go up to the Adra and interact with it, which completes the story objective. After this, all of the Naga will leave the area, and you'll be free to explore and loot, which is, unsurprisingly, what we're going to do. Now this is also, though, where you're likely to hit level 14, and what we're going to do here is put a point into mechanics with most of our stuff in stealth already, and then more points into survival, which is where we're at this moment, and for our ability, we can go ahead and pick up Champion's Boon. From there, though, it's basically just looting what is left of Hasongo here. Make sure you get everything. Hasongo is a bit of a winding place with a lot of different options, but we want to just get everything we can. There isn't anything particularly special here that we need. We're just going to sell all this stuff later to make sure we have gold when we need it. After that, though, we can report back to the people we met in the tower when we first arrived, Zuhira and her people, and kind of wrap up that little scenario. We can also loot some people people around in that given area. And when we go to leave Hasongo, we're going to be put into a text event with the Royal Deadfire Company, as this was their colony. Doesn't really matter what you say here, we're just trying to keep it moving. Next up, story-wise, however, our goal is to eventually reach the Ashen Maw in the Magran's Teeth volcano range to the north. Otherwise, from there, we're going to sail south from Hasongo, past the first dock we see, and then we're going to round that island. Now, this is where it pays to know the map pretty well, by the way. I'm going to give instructions, but it can be a little difficult to follow. But basically, come around that dock, and we're going to follow that little island chain over to the second dock we see, where we can see an encounter with a named entity called Bana. This is a bounty we are going to complete by easily killing Bana really quick, because we can do that basically through stealth. Do remember to keep up with your food and water, as it is rotting as we travel places, though. Now, the first of 2 bounties we're going to tackle, it's not too difficult, but probably a good time to mention to equip the 2 grimoires that we'll have found in Nekataka as well, Ningoth's Teaching, and then the other one from the shop I don't remember the name of. But the main thing we need to do is put spark crackers and a trap in our sort of quick slots so we can start this combat properly here. Now, what we're going to do is obviously be in stealth, but we're going to go forward and set a trap down. This will attract all of the enemies near it, but we're just going to back away from that. And then if you put a spark cracker on the other side of that trap, the enemies will walk into that trap. This is going to trigger combat because of Barath's God challenge, and it will not drop. So this is going to be our opportunity to then use our Essential Phantom spell that we picked up earlier in Nekataka to just continually send in these phantoms until they eventually kill all of the enemies. Now, as I mentioned in the last episode, if you picked up the Effigy's Husk in the Hanging Sepulchre, you can enchant that item with a sort of enchantment, obviously, that will cause damage to anybody around you when you die. That will transfer to your Essential Phantom if you got the materials to make that enchantment. That will make this go a little faster, but your Essential Phantom is actually strong enough to kill every single enemy here. You just have to keep casting it, and of course remembering to re-up your resources via Blood Sacrifice, our Blood Mage specific ability. Other than that, there's really nothing special to it. It just takes some time. Do be careful not to stand super close to where the Essential Phantom is going to fight these guys, because otherwise you'll actually get seen and drug into combat, and then you'll die pretty much immediately, of course. But other than that, not a complicated fight at all. It just takes a little bit of time. After that's done, of course, though, we are going to loot obviously all of the bodies, but definitely the bounty, and thus the head of the character we came here to kill, so we can turn that in at Nekataka a little bit later. After which we can leave and get back on our ship, however, and then we can sail from there over to Dunnage. This is so we can turn in the quest to Captain Ferrante that we did in the Hanging Sepulchre back in Nekataka. This will give us the quest to go to Crookspur as a follow-up, which is where we're going to go here in just a few moments. Once we've got that quest, we can supply up while we are in Dunnage. That's a good place to get food and drink if you don't happen to have any or you're running low, as it will be rotting, of course. Once you do this, you'll receive another letter from Captain Aeldus, again about Crookspur, which we're about to go do. But from Dunnage, once we are ready to continue sailing, we're going to head north. But this is actually a good time to pick up some extra crew members if you want them. This is not strictly speaking necessary, but I do find it helpful to pick up Ragged Sero and Coin Counter Feldus to stock up your ship with. That should pretty much fill out your crew ranks for you and give you a decent start into each individual position. That will make it easier to do things like escape potential battles with other ships. But again, not wildly necessary. From there, again, sail north from Dunnage, following the chain of islands to our north, kind of just right along the shoreline there. But as we get past that island, we're going to move slightly to the northwest, and sometime in here we're going to get another conversation with the gods that will stop us as part of the story since we made it through Hasongo. Now once that's done, continue kind of north, and then we should be able to see Crookspur ahead of us. That will actually be marked on your known locations if you need a little bit of help navigating the map. But just below Crookspur is a dock where we can go to a location known as Silent Dwergus. I don't know exactly, but this is our second bounty we're going to go ahead and claim over here. Now this fight is almost identical to what we just did with the other bounty. We're going to sneak close, drop a trap nearby, drop a spark cracker on the other side of it so they trigger combat over here, at which point we can use our Essential Phantom strategy to again just sort of slowly wipe these guys out. Whether or not you've got that enchantment, you'll be just fine. It just takes a minute to actually do it, but it will work. The only thing to really note if you're not using that strategy with the enchantment is to remember that the Phantom gets whatever you have basically, so in that that case, you can equip a weapon in your main hand to give it a little more damage or just anything like that, basically. So if you've been following this, you have monastic unarmed training at the very least, but you can also just use an actual weapon you have proficiency with as an example to use those abilities even, as they typically just make weapon attacks. But one way or another, that'll get the job done. Then, of course, once that's finally finished, we go ahead and loot the rest of these guys, and then we'll pick up our second bounty item to turn in later. Now we're going to go ahead and go back to our boat and sail just a little bit north to Crookspur proper so we can get that quest going. Now, the first thing we're going to want to do is talk to everybody on the beach, basically, to kind of understand what we're doing here, which is allow slavery or put a stop to it. We're going to put a stop to it by basically ruining this place so we can side with Captain Aeldus later. That's important. We can also buy some stuff, such as various tools we might need, like pry bars, hammer and chisels, that kind of thing. Those are good to pick up here. And you can also, if you want to, grab stuff like grave calling, which you can steal from a chest if you can get your mechanics high enough. It's a pretty high check and you don't honestly need that stuff, but do what you will with it. Now, in any event, when you're at Crookspur for the first time, you're actually probably going to want to go ahead and respec out of stealth and then back into mechanics instead. And this is to open up some gates that we're about to need to unlock. We can respec right at the vendors here on the beach. But basically the gist of it is 9 mechanics, 5 stealth, 11 diplomacy, and everything else into survival. Other than that, all of the abilities and stuff we've picked up to this point remain the same. Once that's done, you can walk around to the entrance to Crookspur if you want, where we're basically going to play nice with the ogre guard here so we can be let in, at which point we're going to essentially be part of a slave auction because that's what's going on here. We don't need to do anything, we can basically just watch, and that will advance that quest a little bit. You can kind of see what's going on in the courtyard at least. But either way, once that's done, we're going to come back to the beach and head into the cave on the right side of it. Now, you'll probably fail the athletics check to get in there just because it's decently high, and that's going to give you a wound, but again, we've got those luminous Adra potions. If we need to clear them at most right now, you should have 2, so maybe consider using 1. But we're going to sneak our way around this cave to get to an iron gate, and what we're going to do is cast a corrosive spell from the Ningoth's teaching grimoire in order to get through that door as quickly as possible. This doesn't waste any time, and then we can start stealing everything we see, of course, as usual, before making it into the Crookspur dungeons. Now, once we're in the dungeons, we're going to cut basically immediately left. Again, grab everything as we go. A mechanics of at least 15 helps down here if you can get to that point, or respec on the beach to get to it if you need be, but it's not wildly required, though I do think you need like at least a minimum of 12 to open the gate for Baja, so we can set free the slaves here. These are warriors from Koiki, I think it's called, and once you set them free, they're going to go crazy and attack the slavers nearby. So we're going to follow that little path right back to the Crookspur cavern exit, though if you're feeling bold, it is actually possible to sneak up to the right a little bit and steal some stuff up that way, though you do have to be quite careful, as there is still going to be a patrolling ogre that you really don't want to mess with. But if you get the opportunity, there is some decent loot over there. But otherwise, we make for the caverns again, so we can head right back to the beach we were just on by sneaking past the spiders in the cavern again. Now, at this point, most of the slavers in the courtyard will be dead, but not all, so it's important that when we go up to the courtyard again that we are still in stealth, but otherwise we can then go up here and steal all of the items from the now dead slavers, which is going to enable us to, of course, sell that stuff for cold hard cash, and some of it's actually worth a decent bit. You can go ahead and sell all of that on the beach if you want to, just remember not to get rid of anything important like your unique items. We are actually going to need a little bit of money here in just a bit in order to buy some sandals in particular. Now, before we leave this point, it's pretty helpful to respec back out of mechanics and back into stealth. That way we'll have that stealth for when we need it, as we don't need to pick a ton of locks coming up. But we will obviously also have other opportunities to do so if need be, so it's not the end of the world. Now, before we actually leave Crookspur, though, we can hire more sailors here, which are incredibly good, including Coretto, who's actually a master navigator by default, which is the main guy we want here. You don't have to hire any of the others if you want to, but if you want to improve them, you could. Coretto's the main one, though. Now, from there, we're pretty much done in Crookspur, but the thing that we need to do now is basically go around to a few shops, gathering up some stuff we need, while also looking for a ship called the Deck of Many Things. The Deck of Many Things has an item that we need to buy before this is over. And seeing how we're coming up to the end of our sort of prep work for everything we've been doing, now is pretty much the time to go looking for it. The Deck of Many Things sails between a few different islands, and if you're lucky, it will actually be around Crookspur when you get here, but otherwise it's likely sailing somewhere around the north of the island Nekataka is on, between Sayuka and the right side of the map. But one way or another, we gotta find that ship. Now for right now though, we can head north of Crookspur before hitting the shoreline and then starting to sail northeast until we hit an island right there with some mountainous regions and a place to dock. This leads to the Vampir's Crypt. We're going to go in here just to get the experience from having explored the place. We are definitely not going to fight anything in here, but basically then we can turn right back around and leave, and we're going to get to name the island as we go. Now this is where I noticed that for me the Deck of Many Things was currently way south of me, so I just continued on my journey, sailing north a little bit, continuing northeast from the island we were just on, dodging storms, so we could make it to the area called Koiki, the place where those warriors we just saved are from. Now this place is pretty hostile generally if you are not kind, so basically what we're going to do is come in, flatter the person at the gate so they let us in thanks to our diplomacy skill, at which point we can get into the village and go talk to everyone, which is going to allow us to get access to another vendor who could potentially have that tusk item we need, alongside several other ingredients. This is Kapeha, who is right at the start of this area. So she also has a ring called Kuwaru's Prize. We're going to go ahead and buy that while we're here. It's just generally pretty helpful. You don't necessarily need it. And if you're running low on food, she can also sell you some of that. I would actually recommend going ahead and equipping that Kuwaru's Pledge ring at this point. And between that and the ring that gives us plus to our diplomacy, we should be pretty all set at the moment. From there, we're going to steal everything in this village that we can before heading up to the main area and witnessing a disagreement that we can sort of choose to get involved in or not, but then we can speak to the chieftain of this area. And there's not a ton we can do here besides steal a whole bunch of stuff. There's a secret room that will give you a whole bunch of treasures if you unlock it and open it to the right, and even a sort of special sword that we're not going to use, but is good fodder for getting rid of everything. Now once we are done with our looting pilgrimage here, we can make our way back out of this place and head back to our ship. From here, we're going to head to the southeast to try to get to a place called Sayuka. Sayuka gives us a good opportunity to buy some things. If you're lucky, you can get everything you need for a good food item here, but keep an eye on where the Deck of Many Things is, because while we're doing all this sailing around, we're ideally going to run into it to keep us from having to, of course, sail after the thing and waste a whole bunch of in-game time doing so. Now in Sayuka, as usual, we're going to loot everything we see, talk to some people, but we're mostly here just to do exactly that and explore a little bit and get the experience for discovering new maps. We're not really going to do anything quest-wise, and what you absolutely should not do is head into the building that is gated off next to the Shark Merchant. If you head into that building, the second you leave it, you trigger a completely unavoidable fight that you're going to have to deal with, and we don't want to do that. Now, this is also a good place to pick up a few good items like oysters and the luminous lobsters and captain's rum, actually. Those are the items we need for the meal that I was just talking about. That's important as well, but not quite as important as the tusk, so we got some time. Now from here, what we're going to do is sail back towards Nekataka, but in order to go to a place called Bekarna's Observatory, which is technically east of Sayuka, but depending on whether or not you find the Deck of Many Things here kind of determines your route. So ultimately though, we're going to head to Bekarna's Observatory so we can pick up one last item we need to really make everything we're doing work. Now the observatory is guarded by all sorts of minions, and we're going to use our increased stealth here in order to sneak past a bunch of guys and loot a sort of book stack next to all these people. Now this can be a little bit tricky, but basically what you're going to try to do here is sneak to the far side of these guys on this hallway, and then you're going to use some spark crackers to distract them to the south of you while trying to make sure you don't get spotted. This can be a little tricky depending on your exact stealth rating at the moment, but remember to keep your boots of stealth equipped and you'll probably be okay. The main thing here though, use Thieves' Putty if you need it as well, and once you've got these guys properly out of your way and distracted with spark crackers, which you should be able to craft more of if you need, you can steal the item from the book stack, which is a cloak that is absolutely paramount. Now you do have to be quick right here, and it can take a little practice to get this right, just like the area in Nekataka that we stealth through, but it's not as bad. Now what we just stole is called the Shroud of the Phantasm. It is a absolutely essential item to making this entire run work, because it's going to give us brilliance based on a 1% chance when we get hit, but I'll explain all that later. For now, we just need that cloak. We literally cannot do this without it. After that, we can leave Bekarna's Observatory, and at this point we are going to go ahead and head back to Nekataka ideally. But again, we have to have seen the Deck of Many Things and stopped by there, which I had not at this point actually, but we're going to have to do it here shortly because we're running out of time to get an item from that. But you can head to Nekataka first if you want to, but ideally you'll have seen it and interacted with it before this, but I'll explain that in a moment. Now, once we're back in Nekataka, we're going to head up to the fish merchant here ideally, because what we're going to be trying to do now is finding enough oysters, luminous lobster, and captain's rum to craft the Captain's Banquet, which is something we ideally really want to have ready by now, because this banquet is what we're finally going to rest with, because it's going to give us a huge buff to damage with our spells, which we're obviously using, action speed, but also immunity to intellect afflictions, perception afflictions, and resolve afflictions. That's going to be very, very useful for us here in a bit. So ideally you'll have crafted this right as you got back to Nekataka after buying luminous lobsters, oysters, and the captain's rum from somewhere before heading back to Nekataka. So from here, we're going to take that Captain's Banquet back to anywhere we can rest from. The Hanging Sepulchre is actually a pretty good place to do that, as you can't rest in Nekataka proper, but you can rest in that sepulchre. Now, once you rest, that's going to clear out buffs that we've been carrying for quite some time, basically the beginning of the game. This is a really good time, if you have not, to actually go ahead and drink a Luminous Audra potion to get the plus to skills just to have it, provided you haven't had to clear out like a bunch of wounds up to this point, because we do have a limited supply of those potions and we do need them for other things. Once you've got that sorted out, however, we are going to go speak to Queen Onikaza again after we turn in our bounties. Now, somewhere around turning in these bounties, or maybe a little bit before, you should have hit level 15. We're going to go put points into stealth and survival, and for our ability, we are going to grab rapid casting this time. But then we go talk to the queen after we turn that stuff in. The bounty givers should be in the Sacred Stair and Serpent's Crown respectively, by the way, so we can turn in those two bounties we killed. Queen Onikaza at the top of Kahanga Palace, however, is going to give us a whole ton of experience, while advancing the main plot and giving us another quest called the Shadow Under Nekataka that we're going to need. Now, in a perfect world, you will have had the opportunity to visit the Deck of Many Things for an item. You'll have that Captain's Banquet buff, and what's more, you'll have just hit level 16 from that conversation with Queen Onikaza, but depending upon the places you've been, how much you've explored, maps you've entered, traps you've unlocked, it's possible that you won't quite reach it. In fact, I just barely missed level 16 on my run, so what I had to go do is find a quest to turn in. Now, somewhat conveniently for me, actually, I had not found the Deck of Many Things yet, so I decided to knock out two problems with one stone, because we cannot continue this run until we hit level 16 from here. Again, ideally, if you did everything right, you'll have hit 16 in that conversation we just had with the queen, but sometimes it misses just based on exactly what you've done. But the reason that is ideal right there is because what we're about to do as a sidestep is going to cost us a lot of time. And again, we are up against a clock here, so sailing around willy-nilly is really not something we want to be doing. It does happen on occasion though, and that's part of just, dealing with the run itself. Now, in my case, I knew that I needed to get level 16, so what I decided to do was go ahead and sail to Fort Deadlight and talk to Captain Aeldis. We're going to have to talk to her anyway. I just skipped ahead a little bit to do it and turn in that quest from Crookspur that we just completed. Normally, we would do that a little bit later, but we're going ahead and doing it here just so I can hit 16 at the appropriate time. Now, if you missed it at the castle, that will almost certainly give you the level 16 you need here. So we're going to go mechanics and diplomacy here, followed up by salvation of time, which is crucial at level 16. And then from our other skill tree, we can pick up tough, which will give us some more HP, which isn't necessary. We just don't need anything from that tree. And then for your proficiency, it honestly doesn't matter much at this point, but I picked up Saber. Now for your priest spell, you'll also get Spiritual Ally at this point, which is going to come in clutch as well. Now, at level 16, we finally have everything we need to start tackling bosses once we've got everything I just mentioned out of the way. But first, let's talk about the Deck of Many Things, because we need to find it. So at this point, I decided that I was just going to find this thing because you absolutely have to find this before we fight our first mega boss, which is going to try to paralyze us. Then we need an item to make ourselves immune to it. And that item, in combination with the Captain's Banquet, will make us immune to the vast majority of status effects. But eventually, we're going to run into Captain Thanic and his Deck of Many Things. So if you're unaware what this is, was a free update with a whole host of just crazy vendors that have awesome items on them. One of them, in particular, down in the deck called Sautara, will sell us the Sandals of the Water Lily, these are what we're going to need. We're going to equip those instead of our boots of stealth, and that will make us immune to dexterity afflictions, which includes paralyzation. If you're feeling bold, you might try to rob the deck of many things, but generally I wouldn't recommend it as we really only need that one item. But once we've got all of that, we need to end our little section here in Nekataka, because now the fun starts. And by fun, I mean it's finally time to start killing bosses and completing objectives. Now from this point on, the run is a pretty straight shot almost of just boss after boss after boss, and everything we're doing is trying to kill those bosses and complete main story objectives. So this is where the prep work is done, and now the actual hard part begins, if you'd believe it. But before we do that, we need to prep our AI if we haven't done it yet. From everything up to this point, you can pretty well do it manually, but there's one specific AI sort of setup you need to have here for your combat AI, that is. So if you're unaware, in PoE2, you can fully customize this, and what we're going to do is for our character here, we're going to make a single AI entry, which is if we have an intellect inspiration, we cast Salvation of Time on ourselves. No cooldown or anything, just if we have that buff, we cast Salvation of Time as quickly as possible. That's important, so we capture Brilliant. Now, if we haven't done it already, you need to equip that Shroud of the Phantasm we got from the observatory, and remember to actually put the Sandals of the Water Lily on at some point, but we don't need them right this second, so you can actually keep your Boots of Stealth, which may actually be advantageous for a moment, but we do need those for later. Now, at this point, we're going to head back to the Undercroft, and specifically the Old City Ruins, because the first boss we're going to kill is that Grub we snuck past earlier. He's the first target of the ultimate challenge. Now, in order to get to him, we basically just retrace our exact route through the old city that we made the first time. Pretty much a straight shot from the entrance. We make our way up to the stairs area here, sneaking right from the stairs, going right next to the wall there so we don't step on that dead body before shooting straight into the old city, before going down and around in order to make it up to the temple where the Grub is. But the catch is, we're not going to go straight for the Grub, but rather that sword we stole from a body down here that spawned a bunch of undead previously is where we're going to go. Now, if you have not equipped the Water Lily sandals yet, now is the time. It's also a good time to put on Deltro's steel cage helmet that we stole from Azali as well, while also remembering to go ahead and take off your effigy's husk. So basically every slot should be full, as you see on screen here, except for your body armor. This is because as we get hit, that item will take damage and potentially break. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start combat, but we're going to start it with those undead we spawned earlier by looting that corpse. So we're going to drop a trap just outside of their range so they come over and investigate. Then we're going to drop that spark cracker as normal, and then we're going to leave those guys there. That's going to start combat for us. This is going to allow us to start buffing up because combat is active, and thanks to Barath's combat challenge, it will not fall. As strange as it might sound, this is where we're actually going to use that grimoire that we got from Archimir's place to cast Wall of Fire on ourselves. And what this is going to do is hit us about 20 times or so. That's important because the shroud we have on, the cloak, has a 1% chance every time we take damage to cast Brilliance on ourselves. Brilliance is a buff that restores our class resources, which in this case is our spell slots. Brilliance happens automatically. Every couple seconds it just gives you those back. So as soon as we get Brilliance, we're going to then use our AI setup to automatically cast Salvation of Time on ourselves. This is going to capture that Brilliance buff by extending it, because what Salvation of Time does is add 10 seconds to every buff you've got at the moment. So what we're going to do is basically just repeatedly cast Wall of Fire on ourselves until we get that Brilliant buff. It can take a minute, and you kind of get a feel for it after a while, but it won't deal enough damage to kill you. You just have to watch your health a little bit. Now, if you run out of Wall of Fire cast, this is where our blood sacrifice ability as a blood mage comes in, because we just sort of health tap ourselves in order to get our initial spell slots back so we can keep trying to get Brilliance over and over again. Now, in between that, we're basically going to use potions or anything else to heal, or simply wait for our blood mage healing to do it. But sooner or later, with casting Wall of Fire on yourself, you will eventually get Brilliance, and that's when the fun starts. Because once you've got Brilliance, now it's time to buff up. First, we're going to cast Barring Death's Door on ourself. Barring Death's Door is an ability that keeps you from dying while it is in effect. However, with Salvation of Time and Brilliance, we can effectively keep Barring Death's Door active permanently. This is going to make us functionally immune from dying unless something can strip that buff away from us, which there are a couple of enemies that can. We'll get to that. This, however, in this fight, can't. But basically all of those spells we've been picking up to this point, Champion's Boon, Alacrity of Motion, Eldritch Aim, just all of that stuff, we just continually buff ourselves up with it, while also casting Salvation of Time automatically via the AI in order to make ourselves incredibly buffed to the nines. Now normally you can't do this because combat would drop, but in this challenge specifically it works because of the god challenges. Now once that's done and you're all buffed up, what we're going to do is put a halt spell on Vela, go ahead and activate combat with the Grub, and then what we're going to try to do is drag ideally one of the little grubs out to where Vela is so she gets terrified and sort of stays still and doesn't try to run in here and help, but even then you could just Barring Death's Door and Salvation of Time her so she's fine. But eventually these little grubs will spawn and you want to bring them back to where Vela is so she doesn't move, as we're using her mechanic to force her to stay still. Once you've got her in place, you're pretty much good to go. Now you just need to fight this giant grub that functionally cannot kill you. There's nothing this thing can do to you while barring Death's Door that will actually kill you, so you should be good to go. You want to kill the burrows that are spawning the little grubs before turning your attention to the big guy and casting spells ideally from Ningoth's Grimoire, like Ningoth's Freezing Pillar and then the Cold Ray Blast. Might take a little bit, but eventually that will kill the giant cave grub, which is the first target of our Infinite Wrath down. But combat still won't drop because, as you remember, we left all of those undead alive. And until those guys die, combat won't drop. So now we need to walk back over to where we triggered combat with those guys in order to kill them as well. Ningoth's Freezing Pillar as well as Flaming Sphere from one of your grimoires should pretty much do the trick. Just hit these guys, same thing, they can't kill you either. It should be pretty easy to wipe them out. After all that's done, obviously go back and loot everything, and then we can stealth our way out of the old city again, exactly the same way we came in. And once we are in the Undercroft, you can actually go around to the side and take a boat back to Queensberth, which is pretty close to where we need to head to next. Because after this, we are headed for the Water Shapers Guild to do our second fight. So Queen Onikaza earlier gave us a quest called Shadow Under Nekataka, and we're going to go do that now at the Water Speakers Guild in Pariki's Overlook. Now you can also go ahead and stop by the bathhouse for a quick bath, which you'll be able to afford now, and get another buff if you want it, which can be pretty handy, but otherwise potentially even stop by the exotic herb shop again, check for a tusk. Cannot overstress the importance of that, but it's a good time to stock up as the Overlook actually has a lot of good merchants, so a good time to do some shopping, as it were. Nonetheless, once we're done, we're going to head over to the Water Shapers Guild. So on the top floor, everything's dead, basically all the people that were here before, so we're going to go around, loot everything, and then make our way down to the basement on the right side of this map. Now, this next part can be a little tricky. It's not like terribly difficult or anything, it just requires a little bit of know-how. So once we're down in the guild ruins, what we're going to do is methodically pick a fight with all the Naga down here that have invaded, and then we're going to carry the buffs that we're going to put on ourselves via just Salvation of Time lasting for so long. Brilliance, as an example, will continue after combat is over. It won't immediately drop, but that timer starts ticking down because we can't cast Salvation of Time out of combat. So what we need to do is make sure that we cast it on ourselves enough in order to carry the buff from fighting all of these guys into the next fight we're about to have with the Water Dragon. But just the same as before, we are going to put a trap at the bottom of the stairs that we find ourselves near until, using spark crackers, we get some of the Naga to run over that trap and trigger combat. And then in this little room we find ourselves in, we are going to buff up again, Wall of Fire ourselves until we get Brilliance. Once we've got it, we go ahead and buff up as usual, but this is where things can get a little bit tricky. So what we're going to do here actually is, instead of what we did last time, we're actually going to go ahead and use our Spiritual Ally spell from just being a priest. And what we're going to do is put Barring Death's Door on that Spiritual Ally, and then send that ally down to the Naga so he can pull them up into the room we are in where Vela is. We're going to do this so we can scare Vela into staying still. Then we're going to hit her with Withdraw. This will take her out of combat and the Naga will ignore her entirely. Now once that's done, we are going to cast Shadowing Beyond. This will make us invisible. We're not going to attack at this this point, because once we are invisible and Vela is hit with withdraw, those Naga and the slimes with them are going to go back where they came from, into that other room. This is exactly what we want. We don't want to fight them up here with where Vela is, basically. Now, once we've got that done, Vela is in her terrified state. The Naga are back in the room we're in. We're going to take one last time, minute or so, basically just to make sure our buffs are up and active, because we are going to get stunned a bunch here in just a moment. So it's pretty handy to give yourself some sort of buffer time on all of our buffs. Now, what we're going to do from there is actually go ahead and cast Shadowing Beyond again and sneak past that initial room of those guys. We don't want to kill them, because if we did, combat would drop. What we're going to do instead is use Shadowing Beyond to sneak to the far side down here, down to this little pool, and start killing Naga down here. Now, there are two sort of totems in the back of this little water shallow pond here that are going to continually spawn various blights to attack you. You're going to want to get those down pretty quick, because otherwise you're going to get stunned and it's going to be a bad time. But as long as you get those totems down and can start clearing enemies out, you should be okay, as long as you gave yourself enough buffer room on these buffs to just comfortably take these guys out without too much worry. But basically our goal is to use our AoE spells to actually kill all of these Naga and their blights. But keep in mind, you're almost certainly going to get stunned a few times while you do this, and it's a little annoying. But after they are finally dead, we're then going to do the same thing with all of the other sort of groupings of Naga down here that we have not actually dealt with just yet. That is to say, entered combat with. So then we get into the other group, and I will say the Flaming Marauder down here at the moment is going to be really hard to kill, because he's not going to take a lot of damage, and we're going to have a hard time hitting the guy, quite frankly. So it'll take a little bit of time, but eventually all of these guys will be dead, and we're going to talk to Guildmaster Myru, who's going to die and give us the items we need to get into the next part of the quest. That is the rod with which we are going to open the door to the water dragon. Now, once that's done, we can head back up to the first room we were just at with that door that we left Vela right next to. This door has a combination with the rod of Guildmaster Myru that will open up for us. And if you're quick, what you're going to wind up doing here is carrying Brilliance from our combat encounter just now into this fight with the water dragon, which is really necessary. Obviously, we don't have time in this next room in order to buff up with Wall of Fire. So we just aren't going to do that. We're going to carry this buff forward from all those fights with the Naga we just had into this next fight. But once the door is open and you've got the code in, we're going to meet Scorielephus, something like that. This guy's name is insane. But basically, we are going to attack him. There is a peaceful way to deal with this, but this is the ultimate challenge, and this guy has to die or you fail. Now, because we are carrying that buff forward, the first thing we're going to do basically is focus on buffing ourselves while ignoring the big water dragon. So cast Barring Death's Door on you and Vela. You have enough time to do this. He's a little slow to attack initially, but once Barring Death's Door is on both of you guys, you can start buffing as normal. Just make sure you stay close enough to Vela to actually be hitting her with Salvation of Time so her buff doesn't run out, and then we can fight her that way. If you need to, you can hit her with Withdraw as well. But from there, once you've got buffed up, you're pretty much good to go. There's really not much the dragon can actually do to us, and at that point, we're just going to start casting our spells to kill the guy. Ningoth's Death Ray is a really great way to go from the Ningoth's spellbook, as well as Freezing Pillar and Frost Ray. Now, in my case, for whatever reason, Vela kind of got hit by one of the dragon's pushback attacks, so she got a little bit stuck here, so that's something to be aware of, I suppose, that can happen. But otherwise, just slowly whittle this dragon down with this method, and he will eventually die, even if it does take a little while. And that is the second ultimate boss down. Now, killing that dragon should bring you to level 17. We're going to put a point into mechanics and then survival again before picking up Arcane Reflection from our wizard tree. This is another buff we can put on ourselves when we are doing that. Now from here, go ahead and loot everything in this room. There are some items on the side that will give you more ground luminous Audra, which you can make more luminous potions with, ideally. And if you haven't looted anything else in this room, now's a pretty good time to do it, because with us trying to capture that buff from the fights with the Naga, we shouldn't have looted that room earlier, because we gotta go. But after that's done, we've got ourselves some breathing room finally, and we can take a moment to craft more luminous Audra potions with everything we've just got, do a little bit of shopping if need be, specifically for the ingredients to make those luminous Audra potions. And if you haven't got one yet, it's also important to buy an oil of allure. We're going to need that much later. We always need to keep one on hand, but it really doesn't come into play until the very, very end of the game. Once we're done with all of our sort of character management, though, we can go back up and talk to the queen. She's going to be pissed that we killed that dragon because it was empowering her water shapers, but she won't kill you or anything, but she will be very upset. She's going to give you a follow-up quest that we're not going to do, and so we can finally move on. That said, what we're going to do from here is leave Nekataka again, and we will technically be coming back one more time, but not really to do much. Now is a really good time to spend some of the gold that we've gotten on upgrades to the ship if you can afford them. Things like better sails, stuff like that to make it move a little faster. It's not required, especially if you didn't have to go searching for the deck of many things, but something to keep in mind as you go. This next part is where it starts to get really fun because now we're after the big bosses. So we are going to leave Nekataka and go to the northeast. Basically go to Sayuka and then up to where we saw the Vampir's Crypt at, avoiding the storms as we go as a reminder. And then once you hit the shoreline around that sort of crypt area, we're going to keep going a little to the northwest before turning a little bit north, and this should put us at an island where we can find the Drowned Barrow. The Drowned Barrow, or Junvik village even, is normally where you'd go to do an optional side quest with a boss called Nemnok the Devourer, who is pretending to be a god. It's a really fun little side quest, but here it's mandatory because he's one of the bosses we have to kill. Now, in town, steal everything, get the quest to go kill Nemnok, and then make your way up to the Drowned Barrows. Now, in the text event that is going to come up when you enter the place, go straight through the mouth of the skull. We're going to make a straight shot through this place, don't go up to the eyes. Now, this next little bit is tricky for a few different reasons, but as usual, make sure we've got everything equipped that we need to have equipped, including some traps to start combat, as well as our grimoires and our quick slots, that kind of thing. But we're going to set a trap just above the stairs that we noticed when we came in the door. And if you wait long enough, you can see an Aoten dweller, and we're going to put the trap right where that guy's standing when he's making his rounds. As usual, once you put the trap down, you got to get out of there ASAP so you don't get caught, and then we're going to go as far to the left as we can. This is a good time to swap out your items and basically your last chance, as a matter of fact, because next up, when that dweller makes his rounds, he's going to step on that trap because we put it where he was standing, and that's when we start our typical cycle of Wall of Fire into Brilliant, into buffing ourselves to the 9s. But there is a catch here. The mages right in this area will actually cast a spell called Arcane Dampener, and what that does is it strips all of our buffs. So if we were just going guns blazing, they would actually debuff us with that and kill us immediately. So what we've got to do instead is, once we are buffed up, we're going to pull up our Spiritual Ally again, and then we're going to hit our Spiritual Ally with Barring Death's Door. And then what we're going to do is we're going to send our Spiritual Ally into the fray up there to get killed, because what's going to happen is those mages will instead cast their Arcane Dampener to get rid of the Barring Death's Door on the Spiritual Ally, and they'll basically waste their spell slots casting it on them. Now, if they happen to attack you down here, what you're going to do is withdraw Vela and hit Shadowing Beyond so you go invisible, and they'll eventually leave you alone and go back to their patrol routes. But repeat that Spiritual Ally cycle a few times to make sure that they don't have any more casts of Arcane Dampener left, and then at that point, you can move up there and just attack these guys with AoEs and bring all of them down. Now, once they are finally dead, we're going to go just straight through the door they were guarding. But the catch is we have to destroy two sort of sigil pillars. These pillars are going to pulse out wounds, and you got to be really, really careful, because if you get more than 3, you die. So we're going to destroy those pillars with things like Ningoth's Freezing Pillar in order to take them down, while also disarming the traps on the floor. You got to be careful right here, because if you get those wounds, you will die. Now, that said, if we have wounds to clear, we've got those Luminous Audra potions, and we're almost certainly going to take at least one here, because the trap just under the switch to open the wall to go down isn't a trap we're going to have the skill to disarm. Now, down in the main layer, you're going to immediately come down south from the stairs into the corner down here, and we're going to tell Vela to halt. Then we are going to, ideally, piss off the salamanders over here to the right of the bridge. Now, it helps if you are in stealth, because then they'll usually attack you outright, but they can be a little particular about attacking you, so you might have to attack them first. Now, the thing is, you want to try to be quick, because if Halt falls off of Vela, she's going to come try to meet you, and what we want is for her to get stuck where she is over on the left side of the bridge. Now, once you've started combat with these guys, we should have our buffs from the previous room, because we're moving kind of quick here. And so as soon as those guys attack us, we can hit Shadowing Beyond, which will put us into stealth mode, and they'll stop attacking us. And ideally, Vela will be somewhere where she's safe. But worst case scenario, cast Withdraw on her, then Shadowing Beyond to, again, make the enemies leave you alone. Now, once combat in this room starts, a bunch of the enemies actually just leave. they sort of file out as they are supposed to. We're going to wait for that to happen. Once that's done, we are then free to buff up with our carried forward buff from the previous room. Once we've got all of our buffs, we're going to do that spiritual ally thing again, sending him this time into the crowds of enemies to our north. We actually don't care about the salamanders to our right at this point. They're kind of irrelevant. But the mages and the guys up there with Nemnok do actually have the ability to cast Arcane Dampener still. But once we've got that all cleared out with Spiritual Ally and everything, and we know that they don't have any more left, we are going to go up there and then AoE everybody down just like we've done previously, because they won't be able to kill us at that point. And this can take a little bit of time to be sure, but eventually you'll get it done and Nemnok will be no more, and he turns into an imp, which is what he actually is. He was using magical items to make himself gigantic, and then at that point you can take him along with you via your diplomacy option, which is always fun. Now once Nemnok is dead, those salamanders down there are actually just going to flee, so you don't have to kill them at all, and then we can loot everything in this room before going on our merry way. There's nothing we really need here, but there's a lot of good items generally, so we're going to steal all that stuff, probably to sell it later if nothing else. Now at this point we are free to head back to the village to turn this quest in, though do mind the traps just above the entrance that we took to get into this place, and clear any wounds you have with your Luminous Audra potion. Now once we are ready to leave Jundvik after doing all of that basically, the next part of this is really easy. We're going to kill our first mega boss, but it's the easiest one and it's not hard at all. We are going to sail due east from Jundvik to a place called the Crystal Desert. It's a small island that is part of Magrin's Teeth, and if you sail east enough from Jundvik, you're going to hit it just kind of by default. It's kind of right there. Now the only thing in the Crystal Desert is a giant mega boss spider. Now the second this spider enters the area, Belranga immediately hits stealth. You won't start in stealth, but immediately go into stealth, and you can stealth your way back to the exit of the area. And this is where we're going to put all our items on, including the sandals of the water lily. The spider's big thing here is that she will try to paralyze your entire group. With those sandals, we are effectively immune to the one thing she's gonna do, outside of just, damage, obviously, which means this fight is all but won already. Now, the thing is, in order to start combat, we are going to run up to the spider and then immediately cast Shadowing Beyond to get away. Now, we'll have casted Halt on Vela like before, so she stays put. At this point, that's going to give us the opportunity, once the spiders go back to where they belong, to start casting Wall of Fire to get our buffs up in order to, of course, actually take this boss on. Now, once you are buffed up, what you can do is pull a spiritual ally to the spider and then bring all of the little spiderlings back down so we can terrify Vela so she doesn't try to follow us, so she stays right near the exit. And once that's done, we are free to make our move. Now, the sort of trick to fighting Belranga is that her defense is insanely high, but it gets lower the more and more of her spider minions we kill. So because we are effectively immune to everything they can do, what we are going to do is leave the burrows alone, let the spiders spawn, and then as we kill them and attack Belranga, we will slowly start actually hitting her, and eventually this will result in their death, and that'll be the first mega boss of the challenge down. Now the next area we need to go is the Ashen Maw, the next sort of main story area, and the way we're going to get there is by following the sort of mountain and island chain from the Crystal Desert down and around, because this whole little area is called Magrin's Teeth. You might run into some encounters with ships here that will be basically impossible to avoid because of where we have to get to, but try to escape them more than anything else. Don't try to fight them, obviously. But the Ashen Maw is marked on your map, so you can just sail straight there from your known locations. And the Ashen Maw is our next story objective and what we have to do next, which is where we're going to kill a fire dragon, a couple of mobs, and have some main story events. But otherwise, not too bad at all. Now, from the entrance, loot everything in the general map. There's nothing dangerous on this first map, so you're free to run around and move. Inside, however, we are going to go up to the left, steal everything in this room over here. There's, again, nothing over here, but we can steal a whole bunch of stuff from the various lootables. And then once we go to the right and unlock that gate with a relatively low mechanics, we can talk to the Rathun, which are giant flame godlikes, so they protect the Ashen Maw. Now we're going to pass a diplomacy speech option, basically saying that we're no friend of Aethys, the god who is currently wrecking their home, and that we mean to get it back, and as long as we've got the diplomacy to make it through there, we'll be fine. Just don't attack them, obviously, and we'll be good. At that point, we're free to loot this room and head down to the Ashen Bridge. Now this is where things get tricky. This combat encounter can be a little hard, but basically just up the path from where we entered the area, there's a group of enemies that we can't really see. So we're going to enter into stealth, drop a trap in this general area, and then use spark crackers to try to get them to trigger it. Because we cannot see exactly where they are, it can be difficult to actually activate combat with these guys, and because their defense is kind of high, it can be hard to get them to actually get hit by the trap to trigger combat to begin with. So it might take a couple tries to actually get combat started here, but once you do, same as usual. Head back to the stairs we came in, halt Vela, get yourself buffed up, you'll be perfectly good to go. This is just a little trash mob of enemies. We are basically just taking the opportunity to build up our buffs and everything before we head to the left to fight the fire dragon. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to kill all these guys, carry forward our buff into the next area, and once we are in that next area, we can basically halt Vela again, walk slightly north to trigger combat again with some fire stuff that's there, and ideally you'll have Barring Death's Door on you and Vela, or withdraw her at the very least, and then you can Shadowing Beyond, and these guys will leave you alone while you refresh your buffs in this room, in this starting place. This can be a little tricky to get right, but once you've got it, you've pretty well got it. Now, once you're satisfied with your buffs, you can actually enter into combat here and start taking out these guys. But before you kill that group just north of you, it's important to buff up a spiritual ally and send him forward along the path. The reason we do this is because we actually need to trigger combat with the dragon on the other end of this map before we kill this first group. Now, in order to do that, we first have to spend a spiritual ally, just get the dialogue to trigger with the dragon, and then you're likely going to have to send another one to actually get that dragon into combat, because it can take a second after the dialogue for the dragon to actually spawn. But once that dragon is spawning and you see it actively fighting your spiritual ally, you're good to wipe out the group at the front door. And then after that, because combat will be up, Vela will be stationed exactly in place at the beginning, we are free to go kill the fire dragon up here, who's not going to be capable of killing us in any way. Pretty standard fight, just use your frost spells, it'll go down pretty quick. Thankfully, with our buffs, there's literally nothing this dragon could do to kill us as long as we cast Salvation of Time. Once that dragon is dead, we're going to loot everything around here, including interacting with the soul of one of the fallen Rathoon who came to entreat the dragon for help. We're going to take the torque from that fallen Rathoon, which is important for the story. But this is also where you'll likely have hit level 19, and I forgot to mention level 18 earlier, sorry about that. But level 18 was stealth and survival again, and then you might as well pick up Practice Healer, which will make it a little bit easier to get our buffs active when we're damaging ourselves a whole bunch, so we can heal ourselves more effectively while we go through that process. We don't really need much from that level specifically, though. Now at level 19, which we'll get after hitting this fire dragon, we're going to put mechanics and survival again, and then we're going to pick up Storm of Holy Fire for our ability, followed by Draining Wall for our wizard ability, which is going to come in clutch for the next few fights we're going to fight. But for right now, once this dragon is dead, that's pretty much all of the actual stuff we had to do here in terms of fights. Everything else we got to do is just go talk to the leader of the Rathoon now, who is going to let you pass as long as you've got that torque with you. Just you don't obviously, trigger combat with the guy, and make sure you loot the room because you won't get a second chance to do so. After that, we take an elevator down to go talk to Aethys. He's going to protect us from the ensuing devastation he's about to cause, and we're going to wake up and find ourselves back in Nekataka, where suddenly everybody is trying to do everything they can to reach Ukaizo, which is where they realized Aethys is going. And that's great for us because that's the final quest stage of the main story, which means we now have the maximum amount of time needed to do everything else. The next time we do main story stuff, it will be to finish the game. And everything we've got left to do is to simply keep trucking and kill these ultimate bosses, clear the DLCs, and then we'll go finish the game and the run. But the first thing we're going to do is leave Nekataka, get back on our ship, sort out all of our food and water and everything, make sure we're good to go. If you haven't done it yet, now is pretty much the time to go ahead and buy the upgrades to your ship that you can grab, like the palm sails and the living steel anchor item. And that's because those are going to give us increases to sail speed, which is why we're going to buy them. Now from there, we've got one more thing to do before I end this sort of penultimate part of this run, which is go kill Concelhaut in Bekarna's observatory. This is where we picked up the Shroud of the Phantasm earlier. On your way there, you're going to get accosted by the gods again, almost certainly, but they've just got more jibber jabber to say. Once we are at Bekarna's though, same thing as always, we are going to trigger combat, ideally with either a trap, or you could potentially even try to do the Shadowing Beyond thing, but you'll get stunned a lot in here, so I don't recommend doing that. And we can use the old trap and spark cracker trick in order to get these guys to actually enter combat, and then we can start buffing up as normal. Now, just like the last few times, we do need to spend a spiritual ally and send them forward with Barring Death's Door so they get hit with Arcane Dampener a few times, and then once that's done and we know that everybody up in front of us has lost all of their casts of that spell, then we can safely move forward and start actually attacking. Now, this can take a minute because there are a lot of enemies in this room, and you genuinely need to make sure every single one of them does not have a cast of that left. Once you do that, though, you're free to start clearing the room with the old-fashioned way. This time, however, we've got Storm of Holy Fire instead of the spells we have been using. Now, that's important because Storm of Holy Fire is like an incredibly high damage-dealing spell. It's going to be our main way of dealing damage from this point on, basically. And it just so happens to be fantastic at taking out groups just like this. But once we finally, and I do mean finally because it takes a minute to clear out the entire bottom floor of the orrery, or the observatory, we can finally head up top. And that's important because we are going to again try to carry forward our buff up to the top level. Now, once we get up there, we're going to halt Vela at the door we came in, and then we are going to run to the portion of the top floor that it looks like these two little wooden bridges. As soon as we trigger combat with Concelhaut via a conversation, by attacking him, we Shadowing Beyond away. This is going to force those guys to just go back to where they were, and then we can run back down to where Vela was, where we can sort of re-up our buffs and be good to go up here. Now, these guys will also cast Arcane Dampener, but we're going to deal with it a little bit differently, and that's because Concelhaut has infinite casts of that ability. There's nothing we can do to stop him from casting that, really, except one neat trick that everybody hates. So what we're going to do here is actually spend one spiritual ally to go drag some of those enemies down here to where Vela is to force her into her terrified state and make her stay still, at which point our fully buffed up self is going to go back to those wooden bridge areas, and what we're going to do is actually cast Storm of Holy Fire on the big group of enemies over there. But once that's done, what we're actually going to do is cast Withdraw on ourself. This is going to force us out of combat, or out of danger really, for about 1 minute in-game time, which means we need to make sure that our buffs have a longer duration than that so we don't lose them. Now, because Vela is so far away that they can't aggro her and that we are untargetable, the enemies in that section will just have nothing to do. They'll just stand there and get pummeled by Storm of Holy Fire, and this will actually also prevent Concelhaut from hitting us with Arcane Dampener and removing all of our buffs. And you'll find that while doing this, he actually doesn't have much health, so this isn't a very difficult thing to do at all, once you kind of know what to do. Now, funnily enough, after this was done, I accidentally wound up sort of killing myself right here, sort of. So the very last enemy that died to Holy Fire also hit me because they were invisible and I was looking for them, so Holy Fire hit me and the enemy and killed us both. But the thing is, as long as you kill all of the enemies before the game over screen happens, you'll actually just stand back up and take an injury instead of losing completely. That's just how the game works, very normal. Now, from there, we're actually going to complete the quest that we had for Arkamir in the observatory, though obviously loot everything as well. Now that everybody's dead, we can go back to the main level and pick up a bunch of the books in the surrounding area that we're going to need to read about constellations. Once we have all of those and we've read all of them, we can wait until nighttime and then go interact with the telescope on top of the roof. This is going to give us the ability, after looking at all those constellations, to give us the coordinates to open up the orrery in order to get the item that we came here for. Now, this is almost certainly where you're going to hit level 20 as well. Mechanics and survival again, if you'd believe it. And this is where I went ahead and picked up Scion of Flame. This will give us more penetration with our fire attacks, that is to say our Storm of Holy Fire. And then for our final weapon proficiency, I just picked up Mace. Again, this isn't terribly important. We're pretty much all in on magic at this point. And then once we've got that item, we can sail back to Neketaka to turn in that quest. This is important because once we go talk to Arkamir, we can get another grimoire that we desperately need. Concelhaut will have dropped his grimoire as well, which we are also going to need. So hold on to both of those. We're going to make good use of them. Now, on the way up to speak to Arkamir, you're almost certainly going to be stopped by a million random events. Just try to pass your way through them without dying or triggering combat, obviously, and you should be fine. But worth a note that they're going to all kind of be bundled up right there because of the way we've been playing the game. Now, this is also a fantastic time to sell all of the junk we've been holding on to because we don't really need it anymore at all. But ultimately, we're going to finish this up by going and speaking to Arkamir, finishing that quest, quest, doesn't really matter how. The reward there is Archimir's Grimoire, and then we'll have Concelhauts like I mentioned, and those two are essential to some stuff we're going to do later, because what we're about to do now is start the DLCs and the final bit of questing we need to do to finish this run, which will likely be the final part of this little series that I've been making, explaining exactly what I've been doing and why. So as you can see, now that the prep work is done, we start moving really quickly, sort of barreling towards the end, which is exactly what we need to do to contend with the timer. Now, on this personal run I've been dealing with, I lost a lot of time looking for the deck of many things to gather those sandals up, as well as having to go talk to Captain Aeldis because I didn't hit level 16 at the right time. So there's some room for improvement even here. But for this particular part, I think that's pretty much going to wrap up this particular video. So hope you enjoyed it. Hope you've been enjoying the run through the Ultimate as I break down and explain the most common method of doing this. And again, the next part should be the last. I'm going to try to quickly plow through all the DLCs and explain everything to get us all the way to the end of the run. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, which naturally means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.